All right, the jurors are back. Lawyers, everybody's ready to get to work. And where's my witness? Where's the witness? Let's grab her and let's put her back in the box, please. All right, we left off in the middle of Ms. Tolliver's testimony with the state. On your chairs, we left a transcript of this call that you're about to hear. For those of you who have keeping track on your notepads, if you are, exhibit number 6 will be the tape, and exhibit number 7 is the transcript, which has been stipulated to by both sides. They're both admitted. State, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Tolliver?
Yes.
And we left off with you telling us that you had asked Corey Jones a question and you didn't receive an answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, when you didn't receive the answer to your question, did you then start to hear some other commotion in the background?
Yes. After, do you want me to explain what I heard?
Sure.
Okay. After I didn't receive an answer, I heard the pinging of the vehicle as if the door had been opened and the keys had been left in the ignition. And then I heard yelling and then gunshots and then yelling and more gunshots.
Okay. All right. Judges, this time I'd like to publish.
You may.
Thank you for calling agency request. This is Maddie. May I have your mobile number that is with you?
561-573-2815.
Okay, give me one moment to pull up the account. And what's the name on it?
Corey Jones. Kellie Sheridan.
Yeah, I see Delray Beach House.
Yes.
Alrighty. And what can I do for you tonight?
I need to get a code. I'm not broke down.
And is this mobile number with the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. What's wrong with the vehicle?
We won't start.
Okay. And is it a four-wheel drive?
I think we will.
What's the address of the vehicle location?
I'm off the PGA, Southtown exit. 195.
On 95?
I-95 exit, PGA, Southtown.
Okay, is there any, southbound down. Is there any buildings, landmarks, anything like that, that I could use to pinpoint your address?
Stop. I'm good. That's good. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Tolliver,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
is that what you recall hearing that night?
Yes.
And after you heard that, what did you do?
After I heard the gunshots, I obviously stayed on the line. I said, "Oh my gosh, I heard gunshots." I stood up and flagged for a supervisor to come over because I honestly didn't know what to do. While I waited for the supervisor to come over, I stayed on the line. And when he came over, I told him that I had not heard any response, and that I didn't know what to do. I heard gunshots. No one has come back to the phone. And we discussed like how we could get a hold of the police in the area, but I didn't know the city or the state.
Okay.
So I had no way of sending someone out to help him. So after that, I was instructed to disconnect the call and try to call back.
Did you try to call back?
Yes, I did.
How many times did you try to call back?
I don't recall for certain, but I think I tried to call 3 times.
When you did get an answer that third time that you attempted to call back, did you go back to work after that?
No, ma'am. After all that, I took my headset off and waited for my mother, who was also working with me, to finish her shift up, and then we left and went home just a few minutes early.
So after you hear this go down, were you shaken up afterwards?
Yes.
When you left to go home, was that the end of your shift?
We left, it was the end of my shift, but we did leave just a few minutes early.
Are you still employed there?
No, ma'am.
Judge, may I have a moment, please?
Sure you can.
Judge, I have nothing further. Thank you.
Cross-examination. Oh, you're welcome. Ms. Tolliver, you may step down. Now be careful. It can be tricky. And she's excused, am I correct, folks? She's excused. Thank you, Ms. Tolliver. Watch your step leaving the courtroom. And State, would you call your next witness, please?
Yes, Your Honor, at this time, the state.
Yes, we'll call James Ogle.
James Ogle. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for your patience. Meet Deputy Dunkley right there at the middle. And when you get there, if you raise your right hand and face Mr. Clerk for me.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
All right, you're going to have a seat up there in that witness stand. And be careful, watch your step. And once you get yourself situated, the microphone, the base of it, the whole thing moves. And I'd like it directly and pretty close to your mouth for me. And once you've done all that and you're comfortable, if you tell us your full name and spell it slowly for us.
Okay. My name is James Floyd Ogle. It's JamesFloydOgle.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Hi.
Already introduced yourself to the jury. How old are you, sir?
56.
And what's your occupation?
I'm a volunteer chaplain for the Shawnee Fire Department. 2015, I was employed there as a lieutenant as well.
And how long did you work as a firefighter, sir?
25 years. I retired a year ago.
So retired in 2018?
Correct.
And what city and state do you live in, sir?
I live in McLeod, Oklahoma.
And back in October of 2015, did you have an occasion to come and visit in Florida?
Yes, I did. It was a Federation of Fire Chaplains conference.
And where was that conference being held?
It was here at West Palm Beach, Florida.
And do you remember what hotel you stayed in when you came and visited, sir?
Doubletree.
And where was that DoubleTree located at? Do you remember what city it was in?
West Palm Beach.
Was it right off the interstate?
Yes.
Palm Beach Gardens? or do you know?
I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay. You remember what date you arrived, sir?
I don't. It was around this. It was the second week of October, and it lasted the third. I believe we usually arrive on a Thursday because we come for the pre-conference, and that year I was there, so I was there for longer than a week.
Okay. And were you staying in a room by yourself, or were you staying with anybody?
By myself.
And going to put something up on the screen, sir. So, the hotel you were staying at, was that right off the interstate? The DoubleTree?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay. Now, with the room that you were staying at, were you on the upstairs or were you downstairs?
I was upstairs on the south side.
Okay. Does this look like the same place that you were staying at? Obviously, this is from the air.
Yes, it does.
And so, what we're looking for, obviously, north is pointing to the direction to the right, going up that way. Is that correct, up that ramp?
Yes.
And then south would be pointing. So, when you say you're looking south, would you be on that left building or would you be on the right building?
Left building.
Okay, so right around that area there, sir?
Correct.
So, when you looked outside, you had a window, is that correct?
I did.
And when you looked out your window, then would you see across that PGA Boulevard?
Yes, I could.
And then the interstate would be to what side?
It would have been, as I was facing south, it would have been to the left.
The east?
East side, yes.
And did you have a balcony, sir?
No, just a window.
And while you were staying there, do you remember hearing any type of gunshots one night?
I do. I heard 3 gunshots. I paused, and then 3 more.
Okay. And what were you doing when these gunshots went off the first time?
I was asleep. They woke me up.
So, and you heard 3 shots initially?
I did.
You know about what time in the morning this was, sir?
It was around 3 or 3:15 a.m.
And how do you know that?
Well, I had a clock in my room, and I do remember looking at it, but I went back to sleep and then just looked at the clock.
Okay. And how much time, generally, if you can tell it all, did it take between the first round of gunshots and the second round of gunshots?
I'm not 100% sure on that, but what I can tell you is that when I originally heard the first 3 shots, I woke up and I had time to sit there and think, that sounded like gunshots, and started dozing back off and then heard 3 more. So it was several seconds.
And after you heard those last 3 gunshots, what did you do?
Went back to sleep,
Did you have the drapes open or closed, or do you remember?
closed.
Did you hear anything else that evening that woke you up again?
I did not.
And you sure there were gunshots?
I'm sure.
Why is that?
Well, the community I live in, I live in a small community out in the country, and I hear gunshots quite often. Also being as a firefighter, I have several police officer friends, and I'm familiar with gunshots.
And when did you get up that following morning?
Let's see, the conference usually starts about 9 a.m., and so I'm guessing I probably got up around 7:30, 8 o'clock, somewhere around there. And I did what I usually do. Anytime I travel, I like sunsets and sunrises, so I looked out the window and out of curiosity, just to see what the sun was looking like. And then I noticed immediately to my left, which would have been east, like we were talking about earlier, command vehicles set up and several police officer apparatuses.
And was that all set up right there by that off-ramp coming off the interstate, sir?
Yes, it was.
And were you later interviewed by the FBI, sir?
Yes, I was.
Tell them the same things that you're saying today?
Yep.
Why'd you go back to sleep after the 6th shot?
I don't know. I've had, even my wife, and I've asked myself that same question. And I can't give you probably an answer that would make sense, but after thinking about it for a while, like I said earlier, I'm from the country. It's not unusual to hear gunshots where I'm from, even at night. But also, at 25 years of serving in the fire department, we have 3 stations. We're a relatively small community, 32,000 people. Our department is set up where you hear every call that comes in, even if it's your district or someone else's district. So you're woke up every call. So all those years, I was conditioned to listen to the radio. If it wasn't my truck, I went back to sleep. I can't tell you for sure that was it, but that's the only thing I could make sense of it. So I can't really give you a good answer why. That's just what I done.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination? Sir, thank you very much. Watch your step. Be careful getting out of there, and you are excused, sir. State, call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor, this time the state calls Kellie Sheridan.
Kellie Sheridan, please. Ms. Sheridan, come on up. You're going to follow the deputy, and then he's going to pass you off to another deputy, and we're going to get you up to the front of the courtroom. And good afternoon, and thanks for your patience. And Ms. Sheridan, once you get there, if you do me a favor, raise your right hand and face Mr. Clerk for me.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
And then you're going to have a seat right up here. Follow Deputy Dunkley. But watch your step. It can be tricky. And then that chair swivels and rolls, and get it pretty close, and the microphone moves. And I'd like you to do me a favor. Move the base closer to you. Yep. And try to talk directly into the center of it for me. And once you've done that, if you would state your full name for the record and spell it for me as well.
Sure. Kellie Sheridan, KELLIE SHERIDAN.
And Kelly, move it a little closer because you don't have to bend over. Perfect. Perfect. And now we're ready. State, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Sheridan.
Hi.
Can you tell us where you currently live, the city and state?
Bradenton, Florida.
Okay, Bradenton, Florida. About how far away is that from Palm Beach County?
About 3.5 hours.
And how long have you been living in Bradenton?
About 3 years now.
Were you living in Bradenton back in October of 2015?
I was.
What do you do for a living?
I'm an occupational therapist at Sarasota Memorial Hospital.
Did there come a time in October of 2015 that you traveled to Palm Beach County for work?
Yes, there was.
Okay, and what was the nature of that trip?
I was taking a lymphedema course for work just to further my skill in that area to provide those patients with that service at the hospital.
And you said you were taking a course?
Yes.
A lymphedema course?
Yes, at the hotel.
How long was that course expected to last?
It was 4 days.
And what day, do you recall what day it was that you came down to Palm Beach County?
It would have been on Thursday.
So you would have been here Thursday, a Friday, a Saturday, and leaving on a Sunday?
Yes, that's correct.
So I want to, well, let me first ask you, did you come down with someone else?
I did.
Who was that?
She's my coworker and friend. Her name is Lizanne Axtman.
Were the two of you going to stay in a room together?
Yes.
Did you have a hotel?
Yes, we did.
And was the hotel that you were staying in the same place where the conference was being held?
It was.
What hotel was that?
It was the DoubleTree.
Do you know where it was located?
It was on PGA Boulevard, right off of the I-95 exit.
Do you recall which floor of the hotel your room was on?
The 6th floor.
Now, the first couple days of your conference, was it just normal conference things going on?
Yes, ma'am. We were in class from about 8 to 4 every day, and then studied in the evening and, went back and did that the next day.
And I want to draw your attention to the last night of your stay. Okay. Do you recall if that night would have been October 18th, 2015, or I'm sorry, October 17th, 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us just a little bit about your room and how it was set up. Was this a suite or a standard room?
A standard room.
And how many beds?
2 beds.
One bathroom, sort of normal hotel room?
Yes, yeah, 2 beds, 1 bathroom, like little desk. It was just like a small, normal hotel room, yeah.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Of course you may.
I've already shown this to counsel.
Thank you.
I'm showing you a photograph just for a demonstrative purpose. Do you recognize what's in the photograph?
I do.
And does that photograph depict not your exact room, but the way that your room was set up?
It is.
Okay. Did the room have a balcony?
It did.
Did it have any windows?
No.
Your Honor, may I publish?
You may.
And this photograph of a room similar to yours, would this be the area where your balcony was?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you said there were 2 beds. Are these the 2 beds in the photo?
Yes.
And which bed would have been the one that you slept in during the time you were attending the conference?
I was the one on like the left side, so yes, correct.
Closest to the door or bathroom?
Yes.
And then, other than the 2 beds, a desk and a chair, nothing else was in the room, is that right?
No.
And then the balcony that you speak of, would that be here?
Yes.
And is the balcony, does it have a slider? That you
It was a sliding glass door.
And are you able to, if you wanted to, open the slider and actually walk out on that balcony?
Yes.
Is there any furniture out there?
There was 2 chairs and just a small table.
And I know that this is not your exact room, but the view from your room, what were you able to see?
It overlooked the exit ramp coming down to PGA Boulevard off of I-95.
So your room, you were situated on the side of the hotel that faced directly towards I-95 exit ramp?
Yes.
And if you walked out of your hotel room, walked out onto the balcony, obviously you could see I-95. Could you see anything else from your balcony?
Yeah, we could see I-95. There was a little row of the parking lot, directly below us. Then there was like a tree area, and then the exit ramp for I-95, and then you could see PGA Boulevard as well.
Now, being on the 6th floor, did you have clear visibility above those trees that were, near I-95?
I did.
And so if you were to look out from your room, you could clearly see I-95, clearly see the exit ramp and those trees?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you also see the grass and the swell area where the grass actually met the roadway?
Yes.
Now, I want to point your attention to the last night of your stay at the hotel that we just discussed. Yes?
Yeah.
And that would have been the night of October 17th, 2015. Do you recall that night?
I do.
What time would you say you went to bed?
We went to bed around 10 that night. Like I said, we studied at night, and then the following day was Sunday, was the last day of our of our class. So we had a test that next morning. So we went to bed early, and preparing for that class the next day.
And when you say we, is it just you and your coworker friend that was in the room?
Yes.
What time do you believe it was that you woke up on the morning of the 18th?
It was around like 3:15, 3:30 in that range.
And why did you wake up so early?
I woke up because I heard gunshots.
So you're asleep in your bed. You hear gunshots while you're still asleep?
Yes.
And is that when you woke up?
Yeah, that's what woke me up.
Did you, after hearing the gunshots, what did you do?
After hearing the gunshots, I woke up. I just got out of bed very quickly, trying to almost run. I stopped briefly at the foot of my friend's bed and shook her and said, I heard gunshots, call 911, and then I ran out onto the balcony.
Now, you ran out onto the balcony. Did you hear the gunshots coming from that area?
Yes. I mean, I heard them, very clearly outside. So I figured they were pretty close and yes.
And so did you run out to go and look to see if someone was out there shooting?
I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, about how many, when you woke up, about how many shots did you hear? Do you recall?
Initially, when it woke me up, I would say 2 to 3 shots I heard initially.
Was there a pause and then you heard more shots?
There was. The initial shots woke me up, and then there was a brief pause, and then I heard another round of 2 to 3 shots following that.
Do you recall where you were in the room or out of the room when you heard the final shot?
I was still in the room, but I was next to the sliding glass door, getting ready to open that to go out onto the balcony.
So at the time of the last shot, were you in the process of opening the door to head out onto the balcony?
Yes.
And did you walk out onto the balcony?
Yes.
When you got out on the balcony, what did you see?
I saw a gentleman holding a gun and stepping backwards from the area, walking backwards, holding a gun in one hand and his cell phone in another hand.
Did you see any other people walking or running near or around that gentleman?
I did not.
So would he have been the only person that you saw?
Yes.
And were you able to get a really clear look at him?
Yes.
I know that it was 3 a.m. or around 3 a.m., so was it still dark outside?
It was.
How about lighting? Was there any lighting in the area?
There was. There were street lights on, coming off of the interstate, off of the exit ramp, light posts.
And did you see any vehicles?
I did. It was, I saw a vehicle heading off of the exit ramp near PGA Boulevard on the right-hand side, and it was an SUV.
Okay. And when you say, just so I'm clear, when you say you saw a vehicle heading, the vehicle wasn't in motion, was it?
No, sorry, as if they were getting ready to exit, but no, it was stopped. Yeah.
So I want to go back and talk a little more about the person, the man. Were you able to tell that it was a male?
I was.
What was that person wearing?
He was wearing a hat and a shirt, collared shirt, and darker pants that looked like they could have been blue jeans.
As you looked down at him, could you tell whether or not he was a law enforcement officer?
No.
You just saw someone with jeans or dark pants, a T-shirt or shirt, and a hat?
Yes.
And you said that you saw this man with a firearm in his hand?
Yes.
Now, are we talking about a rifle, a big gun, or a handgun?
Handgun.
And what was he doing with that gun when you saw him?
It was still pointed. His arm was extended, and the gun was still pointed. And then he had the cell phone in the other hand.
Talking about the hand that he held the gun, do you remember which hand was holding which?
I do. The left hand had the gun in it, and that was extended, as if he was aiming. And then the right hand had the cell phone up to his ear.
Can you just demonstrate for us when you say his arm was extended as if he was aiming? What do you mean by that?
Sure. This way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the arm was fully extended out?
Yes.
Now, you testified earlier that you were able to see the roadway, the grass, as well as the tree line that separated the hotel from I-95. Is that right?
Yes.
Where was the man standing?
He was standing near the grassy area, but on the road. So backing up, still on the road, but backing up towards PGA Boulevard.
And when you first saw him, where was he in relation to that vehicle that you saw, the SUV?
It was pretty far away. Do you want me to give it to you, if I can kind of think and feed or anything? But it was a distance. It was a good distance away.
And the direction that you saw his firearm, you said that he was pointing as though he was aiming at something?
Yes.
Where would you, if you could see, where was his firearm pointed at? Like,
It was pointing, north. Again, he was facing like towards the interstate, the opposite direction of going down, and kind of. Can I do it? Is that okay? It was more like this way and like a little bit to the left, like towards the grass area.
now, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
So did there ever come a time where you noticed that a body was out there, a dead body?
Yes.
Okay, and how did you see that or learn that?
Once, all the other law enforcement got to the scene, and there, came a point after they had come around that they were then in that wooded area with flashlights, and that's when I saw the body on the ground in the wooded, grassy area.
So you were still watching as police officers discovered the body,
Yes.
and they were using flashlights?
Yes.
Is that how you were able to see that a body was there?
Yes.
Now, going back to when you said that you saw the man aiming his firearm into the trees, was he aiming it near or towards the direction where you saw that body being discovered?
Yes.
And are you certain about that?
Yes.
Now, did you stay, about how long did you sit there and, watch what transpired?
Couple of hours.
Was it you as well as your friend who was in the...
Yeah, she eventually came out. She was scared, and she didn't come out initially. But yeah, she did initially come out. Or eventually, come out.
At the time that you saw the person, the man in the jeans and the shirt with the gun, did you see, or did you hear him say anything?
No, I did not.
Did you hear anyone, another voice, anyone that may have been outside with him say anything?
No, I didn't.
Did you ever see a second person running or walking away from the person with the gun?
No.
One moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Sheridan. No further questions.
Okay.
Any cross-examination? Go ahead, sir.
Hi.
My name is Scott Richardson. I am one of the lawyers representing Mr. Raja.
Hi.
I want to go back over a couple of things that you testified to. When you first went out onto the balcony, the man was already walking backward?
Stepping backwards, yes.
Okay. I believe you said that he had a collared shirt on, like I do?
Yes, it was a shirt, yeah. Collared shirt is what it appeared to be, yes.
Okay. All right. And the gun was in the left hand?
Yes.
Now, you said that did you stay on the balcony for that entire 2 to 3 hours afterwards?
About 2 hours, yes. Mm-hmm.
And your roommate, your colleague, joined you as well and stayed with you?
She did, yes.
And you saw a lot of police vehicles and other vehicles arriving, right? Like
Yes.
emergency vehicles?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
You have to say yes out loud for the court report.
Sure.
You saw the first police officers or the first vehicles arrived from PGA Boulevard, is that right?
Yes.
And you then saw a vehicle head north on the off-ramp?
Yes.
And then after that, you saw the flashlights?
Yes.
And they searched for a few minutes and then That was when the body was discovered and you were able to see it.
Yes.
And as the vehicle was going up north on the off-ramp, there was also at least one other officer holding a rifle.
Yes.
One moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Sheridan. No further questions.
Any redirect? No, Your Honor. All right, Ms. Sheridan, thank you so much. Now watch your step, and most importantly, don't forget your purse.
Okay, thank you.
You got it.
Thank you.
And she is excused. State, call your next witness.
Yes, sir. State calls Sergeant Greg Mull.
Sergeant Mull. Jurors, you okay to keep working? Everybody's all right? Okay, good. Sir, come on up. Thank you for your patience. Meet Deputy Dunkley out here towards the middle. Once you get there, if you raise your right hand, face Mr. Clerk for us.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, sir.
All right, you're going to have a seat right up here. Watch your step. Once you get yourself situated, the chair does swivel and it rolls. But most importantly for me is you grab that base of that microphone, and so you don't have to lean over the entire, pull it all the way, pull the base to there. And if you would talk directly into the center of the microphone, state your full name for the record, and then slowly spell it for us.
Full name, Gregory Scott Mull. Last name, M-U-L-L.
Terrific. State, you may proceed.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
I know that you've introduced yourself. If you would please tell the jury how you are employed.
I am a sergeant with the City of Palm Beach Gardens Police Department.
What kind of law enforcement or military experience do you have, sir?
I have been a police officer since 2005 with the city.
And all of that with Palm Beach Gardens Police Department?
Yes, sir.
And as a sergeant right now, what are your duties?
Right now, I oversee the traffic division in the police department.
And by overseeing, what do you do as a sergeant over the traffic division, sir?
I oversee a unit of 8 officers. We patrol the streets and do traffic enforcement, vehicle homicide investigations, and any other traffic initiatives the city puts forward.
And back in October of 2015, did you have the same duties as a sergeant over traffic, sir?
No, sir. I was assigned to road patrol.
You were assigned to road patrol?
Yes, sir.
And did you work with a Mr. Nouman Raja?
No, sir, not directly.
Did you know Mr. Nouman Raja as a police officer with your department?
Yes, sir.
Do you see him in court now?
Yes, sir.
Can you please describe something that he's wearing?
Looks like a dark jacket with a tie and a white shirt.
Ask the record to reflect that the witness has identified the defendant, Nouman Raja, Your Honor.
Noted.
Did you ever supervise him in the Palm Beach Gardens Police Department?
No, sir.
And back on October 18th of 2015, did you respond to an officer-involved shooting at PGA in 95?
Yes, sir.
And what were you doing at the time just before the shooting, sir?
I was working an off-duty, extra-duty detail at downtown at the Gardens.
And if you would, just explain to the jury what you mean by an extra-duty detail, please.
It is like a side job through the city where I'm not working for the city during my regular hours. People hire us as police officers to do security, traffic, other things.
And one of those places that you go and work off-duty or extra-duty is downtown Palm Beach Gardens?
Downtown at the Gardens is what it's called, yes, sir.
Now, when you work those type of details, how are you dressed?
And full uniform?
Just like you are here today?
Yes, sir. Maybe not long sleeve and tie, but yes, sir.
And at that time, back in October 18th of 2015, you had your uniform on while you were working that extra-duty detail?
Yes, sir.
And how were you notified about the officer-involved shooting, sir?
At the time, I was dealing with an issue on the detail, and I heard something on the radio. Wasn't quite sure what I heard at that point, but it caught my attention. So I stopped, listened a little closer, and then don't remember the exact wording of what come across the radio, but realized, okay, something's happening, and this is where it happens, and that's where I got in my car and headed.
And so, at that time, what did you do?
I responded, left downtown at the Gardens, went out to PGA Boulevard and traveled west, just under the overpass of I-95 to the southbound off-ramp from southbound 95 to PGA.
You have your lights and sirens on?
Yes, sir.
And when you got there, what did you see?
I arrived on scene and I turned right onto the southbound off-ramp.
Yes, sir.
As I turned, I could see a white van. I could see an SUV, and Officer Raja was in that general area.
And is this a reflection of what you would see this map up here? Is this the same area that you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
And this is Palm Beach Gardens, and this is that off-ramp that you would have pulled up?
Yes, sir.
And the location where you would have seen the van and the SUV, was that further down here, or was it further up here?
No, it was down in
Down
that
here?
area. Yes, sir.
And how was the van positioned to the SUV?
If I remember correctly, the SUV was facing south, and the white van was facing in a southwestern direction.
So the van's facing over this direction, and the SUV's facing down in this direction?
And somewhat, yes, sir.
How were they pulled up next to one another?
Well, they weren't next to each other. The white van was in front of, not sure the exact distance. It wasn't like right up to the bumper. There was space in between the front of the SUV and the right side of the white van.
And was it positioned so that the van was right, like basically bump front end to the SUV? Or was it past it? Or, what kind of position are you talking about?
It wasn't, I guess, because of the area that the SUV was pulled off to the side, it couldn't be pulled directly all the way over. So it was, I guess it would have been more the front of the white van toward the front of the SUV.
So front to front,
Or the
not
right
directly
front.
head on,
Right.
just one's
Right front.
facing west, one's facing south, but their front ends are close to one another?
Yes, sir, with distance in between.
And where did you see the defendant whenever you got on the scene?
I don't recall the exact spot that I saw him in.
Was he near the vehicles, or was he
He was
away from the vehicles?
in the general area. If the white van is facing in the western direction and the SUV is facing in the south, in the general area on the east side of those vehicles.
Were you familiar with that white van?
I think I've driven it once or twice before over my career, but not too many times to be vaguely familiar with it.
Were you familiar that it was a van utilized by the Palm Beach Gardens Police Department?
Yes, sir.
And the SUV, did you recognize that at all as far as being a law enforcement vehicle?
No, sir.
Did you say anything to the defendant at that time?
Still not exactly sure what was going on. As soon as I pulled up, I believe I asked him if he was okay, if he was hit, and he said no, and that was all at that point.
Did he say anything about anybody else on scene? Did he say that there was anybody else there or where they had gone?
I don't recall at the exact moment, but at some point he had described that someone was running northbound, either on the ramp or over the guardrail area.
And what did you do at that time?
At that time, Sergeant Sprague at the time was further up the ramp on the southbound ramp. I went up, met with him, and him being the on-duty sergeant at the time, asked him what he needed me to do.
And so Sergeant Sprague was already on scene, sir?
Yes, sir.
Was there anybody else that was on scene that you're aware of?
Not that I recall.
And you said he is farther up the ramp, up here to the north of the ramp?
Yes, sir.
And did you see Sergeant Sprague's vehicle at all?
I believe he had it with him up the ramp.
If he came in off of PGA Boulevard, would he had to have driven past the defendant to go up that north way of the ramp?
Overruled. Go ahead.
If he came in off of PGA Boulevard here, would he had to drive past the defendant on his way up the ramp?
Well, depending on how he got to the scene, he would have driven on the right side, you would guess. Yeah.
Do you know if Sergeant Sprague spoke to the defendant prior to your arrival?
No, sir.
Do you know anything that may have been said if they did speak?
No, sir.
And after you saw Sergeant Sprague and talked to him, what did you do?
I went back to the bottom of the ramp to speak with Officer Raja.
And what was the purpose of speaking to the defendant at that time?
Well, after speaking with Sergeant Sprague, he told me to go back and get with Raja and see exactly what we were dealing with and what we were looking for.
And did you talk to the defendant at that time?
Yes, sir. I went back down the ramp. I got with Raja and said, can you tell me what happened in a quick, not detailed scenario? And he said that he was driving past, saw the SUV, didn't think anybody was in it, pulled around and stopped to get out and get the tag. As he came around the front of the van, somebody popped up in it and then stepped out and pointed a gun. Then I don't remember the exact conversation at that point, but it was leading toward which direction that the person that come out of the SUV ran.
Okay, so did you ask him whether or not he had cleared the SUV vehicle?
At some point during that time, yes.
And what was his response?
No.
Based on him saying that he hadn't cleared the vehicle, what did you all do?
We cleared the vehicle.
Find nobody else was in the vehicle, I think.
Right. We didn't search it or anything. We just made sure that no other occupants were inside.
How was the defendant dressed at that time?
I don't recall specifically what he was wearing. He was not in uniform.
No uniform?
No,
Did he have any indication on him whatsoever that he was a law enforcement officer?
Not that I can recall at that time.
How was he acting?
His adrenaline was up. You could tell that he was in an excited state of whatever had just happened was causing him to react.
And so, do you remember him having his vest on?
No, sir, I don't.
Remember him having his radio?
No, sir, I don't.
And to the best of your recollection, he said that somebody jumped out and pointed a gun at him?
Yes.
And did he say whether or not, the defendant, did he say whether or not he fired his weapon?
I didn't ask at that point.
Did other law enforcement officers now start showing up while you're having this conversation with the defendant?
Yes, sir.
Who else was showing up, if you remember?
Who I remember at that point, I remember now Captain Anderson. He was a sergeant at the time. Sergeant Anderson.
Sergeant Anderson then?
Yes.
Captain Anderson now?
Yes, sir.
Did you begin looking for the individual that the defendant say jumped out with a gun?
Yes, sir. We got together and we didn't know if maybe someone if he had hopped the fence into the adjoining hotel property. We started walking up the ramp, looking down to the south, I guess the southwest.
And so when you say we, who are we?
Well, I believe at that time Sergeant Sprague had come back down the ramp, and we started walking up the ramp. It was myself, Raja, Sergeant Anderson, and Sergeant Sprague. And
just 4 of you are now walking up the ramp, sir?
Right, kind of shining flashlights down into the swell area, looking to see if maybe someone was hiding, laying, or if they kept going.
And did you have any type of tactical approach, or were you just walking with flashlights?
I don't recall walking up the ramp in the tactical formation when we call it a stick. I do know once we spotted someone laying in the swell area that we did form up before we approached.
And explain what a tactical stick is, sir.
It is, you have, in this instance, it's four people, and it's in a diamond formation. The first person at the front in the point has a ballistic shield, and then two officers are beside him on his left and right, and then you have one in the rear.
And so the officer on point with a ballistic shield obviously has a shield in one arm, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that shield meant to be bulletproof or bullet resistant, depending on what type of rounds, isn't it?
And depending on the rounds and the strength of the shield, yes, sir.
And what is that, the individual on point, does he have a firearm in his other hand?
Yes, sir.
Who was on point, if you remember?
I believe Sergeant Anderson had the ballistic shield.
And then, as far as the other individuals, do you remember which side of the stick that you're on, sir?
No, sir.
Do you remember what kind of firearm you had out during the approach?
In my approach, I would have had my sidearm, my Glock 40.
And then Sergeant Sprague, do you remember what he was using during the stick?
I do not remember which weapons they had.
And how about the defendant, Nouman Raja?
No, sir.
Was everybody armed while they're approaching the potential person in this stick tactical formation?
I believe so, but I can't specifically say who had what weapon at that point. But yes,
Would it be
in that formation.
shockingly unusual if somebody didn't have a firearm?
Right.
And did you all locate an individual that became known as Corey Jones?
Yes, sir.
And did you locate Mr. Jones quickly?
Within, I don't know the exact measurements, but maybe halfway up the ramp, yes, sir.
And so you're up the ramp here, and then you had said that you started looking off to the west, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then, so it would have been in that area that you would have located Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember who spotted Corey Jones first?
I believe it was Officer Raja.
And do you recall the position of Corey Jones while he lay there on the ground?
If I remember correctly, his head would have been facing toward the east, and he was face down.
Was he moving at all?
No, sir.
What happened at that time?
We gave commands. I don't remember who exactly it would have been specifically. Gave commands to show us your hands, because I believe one of his hands, I don't recall if it was both, but one was underneath him. But there was no movement and no response.
Is that what you would normally do if you had an individual that you couldn't see his hands?
Yes, sir.
Was there any movement after you're saying, show me your hands?
No, sir.
What did you do at that time?
At that time, the four of us approached, and Officer Raja went around and removed his hand out from under him and checked for a pulse.
Are you aware of whether or not a pulse was found?
There was no pulse at that time.
Did he appear to you not to be living?
Yes, sir.
What did you do at that time?
At that point, we called for fire rescue to come in.
And then after the medics were called, what did you do, sir?
Went back to my vehicle, grabbed the crime scene tape out of the trunk, and started securing the crime scene.
And did you locate any evidence while you were securing the crime scene, sir?
At some point during securing the scene, we noticed shell casings outside the vehicles, and we called for those to be marked.
Do you recall, if you don't, it's fine, do you recall like what side of the vehicles those casings were on?
No, sir, not specifically.
Were they in the roadway or were they over in the grass?
I believe the ones I saw at that time were in either the roadway or the paved portion of the road, yes.
And when we say shell casing, you just explain to the jury, what is a shell casing, sir?
It is when you have a bullet for a gun and you fire the weapon and the primer ignites, it forces the bullet out of the case. And then what's left over is called the casing that holds the bullet in the primer, and it's ejected from the weapon and thrown to the ground.
So when you pull that trigger of a semi-automatic firearm, bullet goes out the front end, the casing that held that gunpowder there goes shooting out to the side?
Side, top, left, it could.
Gets ejected from the firearm?
It gets ejected, yes, sir.
And so you saw some of these shell casings on scene, sir?
Yes, sir.
And did you make sure that they were marked?
Yes, sir, they were marked at that time.
Did you touch them?
No, sir.
You see anybody else touch them?
No, sir.
You kick them?
No, not intentionally, no, but going up the ramp the first time, I don't recall specifically we walked through that portion of the roadway, but.
So you're not aware of ever kicking them?
No, sir.
Aware of anybody else kicking them?
No, sir.
Did you obtain the defendant's firearm at any time?
Yes, sir. At some point after securing the crime scene, I took Officer Rogers' weapon and placed it in my trunk.
And why would you do that, sir?
To secure the weapon, because it was used. It was used in the event that we were about to enter
An
into the
officer involved shooting,
investigation.
make sure and secure the firearm of the officer?
Yes, sir.
And once you placed it in your trunk, did it stay there secure?
Yes, sir.
And was it just his weapon, or was it a weapon and his holster?
It was the weapon in the holster.
And in many different kinds of holsters, is that true?
Yes, sir.
Was this like the regular kind of holster that you think, like a smaller holster, or was it like a big holster, or do you even remember?
I don't remember what type, size. No, sir.
Whatever it was, you put it in your trunk?
It was, yes.
And did you do anything to the firearm before you put it in the trunk? Did you?
No, sir.
Did you clear it? Did you make it safe? Did you take out the magazine, anything at all?
No, sir.
And did you then take that weapon out of your trunk at some point and provide it to somebody else?
No, sir. I notified when the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office investigators were on scene. I notified them that I had it in my trunk, and I don't remember what time, but at some point they walked over with me. I unlocked the trunk, lifted the lid, and they removed it.
And did this conclude your involvement in the case at this time, sir?
Yes, sir.
I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination. You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Sergeant.
Good afternoon.
How are you today?
Good.
A couple of things I just want to ask you about. You arrive at the scene, and you see the van, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's stationary,
Yes, sir.
correct? And from the time that you first saw it until the time that you left the scene, that van stayed right in that spot.
Yes, sir.
Nobody moved it? Nobody, right?
Nobody moved it.
And that's important because you want to make sure that the evidence and the scene is preserved exactly the way that it was at the time of the incident.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's the reason for putting up crime scene tape around, to make sure that nobody enters into the scene and disturbs the scene, because you want to make sure that it's the way that it was at the time of the incident.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when the four of you, the three sergeants and Mr. Raja, were proceeding up the off-ramp, believe that you said that Officer Raja then saw the body, and it was at that point in time that you deployed the ballistics shield, right?
I believe it was, yeah, I don't recall whether Sergeant Anderson had it with him as we went up the ramp, or if he got it after we were going to go down the hill.
Okay. But certainly as you begin going down the hill, the ballistic shield is now being held by someone, and then, like you said, it's a diamond formation, one on each side and one behind.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that ballistic shield is a precaution for officer safety, right?
Yes, sir.
To make sure that you, the officers, are protected in the event that someone, including the person who might be on the ground, has a firearm.
Yes, sir.
And the prosecutor asked you whether, he said it would be shockingly unusual if either you or the other officers didn't have a firearm. It would be unusual. It would be, that's what you would want to do because you're not sure what's going on. You're not sure whether that person has a firearm.
Correct.
So all these precautions that you're taking are for your officer safety because you're not sure, and you want to make sure that you are safe.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Fair to say that you weren't sure whether or not Corey Jones had a gun because the defendant told you that he had jumped out and pointed a gun at him right away?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
The defendant told you that an individual jumped out and pointed a gun at him, right?
Correct.
So, based on that information, is it fair to say that you would treat the individual as he may potentially have a gun?
Correct.
And regardless of whether or not you even know that somebody has a gun, if you see somebody laying there, are you going to approach them in a tactical formation like that?
Correct.
All right. Nothing further, Your Honor. You may be excused.
You may step down. Watch your step, okay? Thank you so much, sir. Let's do this. Jurors, very quick. I see some people starting to look a little tired in my jury box. So let's take a just 5 minutes in the jury room. Does anybody need air or anything? We're not that far from lunch. So take 5 minutes, get your coffee, whatever you want there. Lawyers, use the restroom, whatever you need to do. But we're going to hit the ground running. I mean, literally, let's make it 5 minutes. Quick. Stretch. Do whatever you need to do. And then state, if you'd whisper to one of the officers, deputies, who the next witness. So just so we line them up, it's sure taking a long time to get the witness to here. So they're going to give you a heads up, and let's get them lined up. Quick 5-minute break.